Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at all of the decks that I've used in the month of May. So I have a confession to make. May was a tough month. I think towards the end of the month I actually wrote down in my diary that May felt like it was 365 days long because it had so many things happening, but at the same time things that were challenging, and so it felt like it lasted as long as a year. And ironically, that kind of fatigue started manifesting itself at the beginning of the month, probably because April has been a very intense month as well. And so I generally, these videos, I like them because they also constitute some kind of a benchmark for me. I always like to look back at my activities, what I've done for my YouTube videos, for my members videos, for my Substack. By the way, if you don't know, I am an author and I have decided to publish my first book in the trilogy of Dr. Emily Gray on Substack completely for free. So if you want to read it, you can completely for free. You just have to find me on Substack, and it's Fairlight Wellness, all attached to Fairlight Wellness. And you will see my books, and I publish 3 chapters again for free every week. And that has actually been really cool because I have had so far, in only 2 weeks, I've had 360 people reading my book, which is making me feel like I'm on the top of the world, honestly. And I know that it's not generating any profit, but that's the whole point of understanding ultimately that I just want people to read my book. Whether they pay for it or not doesn't matter. And as a matter of fact, I actually prefer it that way because I don't know, I feel like when someone buys a book, they feel like they have to read it just because you spent money on it. When it's completely free, you read it because you actually like it. And so the fact that it was read or it was read 350 times in 2 weeks, it was just really, really amazing. But let's have a look. So this is my usual traveler's notebook in olive green. And I have just refilled the insert for the month of July. This will be July. So it's strange because I've got May and then I've got June here and then I have to go back, but it's fine. So I just have to say something about the Traveler's Notebook insert. I was very disappointed because I used the one the cover came with. So this is the default refill that you receive every time you buy a new of these ones. And this paper is just terrible. I don't even know. It feels like it's not even Tomoe River paper, even though it does say at the beginning that this is the 62 grams. I think, is it the 62? Anyway, it's the thicker kind of Tomoe River paper, but it's still supposed to be Tomoe River, and it just does not feel like it is. It feels to me more like it's a Midori. But having said that, I have 90% of my experience with my Tomoe River paper is mostly on 52 GSM per square meter. So it's just probably because the thickness is different that I didn't feel like it was a Tomoe River. But whatever the paper is, I did not enjoy it. And most of the time, I think it was because it's completely blank. And even though I do use Midori blank paper when I'm writing my books, that's all out of necessity in the sense that I need it to be that way because I don't have a very neat writing. So, and it tends to be on the larger side. And so I kind of need it to be blank. But when it comes to journaling, it's not very good. But in any case, it's fine. I needed to try, and I'm happy that I did. These were all my inked fountain pens with the different inks. I have to say that in the May ink report, I was kind of upset and I started giving out ratings to the pens, and particularly the Twisby Echo White with a medium nib, inked in a diamond ink pen to Weeping Willow. It was a complete disaster. It was really, really a failure. And also this one was even worse. So I did purchase in the month of May a new fountain pen, which is my Esterbrook ST Winter White. So it's this one here. It is a really beautiful pen, absolutely beautiful pen. It's called Winter White because the decoration look like snowflakes to me at least, but it is the color snow, and it does have gold trimmings. I have requested when I bought it, I wanted a broad nib, so I am that kind of person. I use broad nibs. I know that it's not for everyone, but I just really love chromo shading inks, and when you have a fine or an extra fine, it may work, but most of the time, because chromo shading inks tend to be dry, you don't have the same result on paper as you would have with a broad nib. So I really wanted the chromo shading to show up, and it was my mistake because I inked it up with I don't think it's here because I actually bought it not at the beginning of the month, but it's definitely here. So I inked it up with the Colorverse Wang Cho, and it's just a really dry ink, really dry ink. It's got a really beautiful chromo shading, but it just doesn't write well, not even in a broad nib. So I'm still keeping this pen for the month of June because I did put a lot of ink. The converters on this pen holds up to, I believe, 3.5 milliliters. And I had no way to finish it simply because it was just really hard to use. I put a strain on my wrist and my hand. The ink just wasn't flowing. And so I have a lot of ink still in this pen, and so I'm just going to try and finish it. But in any case, we're all here for the decks, so this is not what we want to see. It was just an introduction of the things that I do, basically. So I started in May, I started writing down week by week, as you can see. I started dividing the decks between personal practice decks and YouTube membership decks. And then obviously there's other decks that I use in the videos for all of the subscribers. I don't write them down here simply because I do show a lot of decks in a month. I think in the month of May, I went a little bit over the top because we were talking about new decks that no one has seen before, which are really worth it. We were talking about decks that help me focus on my healing journey, which I actually use for my YouTube membership. So if you're not familiar with my membership, I've got 3 levels. The first level is just a supporting membership, but it does give you access to my private Facebook group. The second level is the Sunlight membership, and you have access to Energies of the Week video, Read Like a Pro videos, so an advanced course on reading tarot. And we're currently looking at all of the major arcanas and their classes and constellations, which is a very interesting concept base inspired by Mary Kay Greer's books. And then we started, but I want to talk about it later. But in any case, we finished off with the Yokai Yochi deep dive, and we also started with the Sacred She Tarot deep dive. The Sacred She Tarot is my Madhava Padma, and so I felt like we needed to start with a comparison with the Osho Zen Tarot, which was illustrated by Madhava Padma. And with and then I gave readings every other Saturday, free readings. And then with the Starlight members, I actually do a very intense, but very powerful healing step-by-step kind of in guidelines. And I'm doing this with them. So it's very nice because we're more or less going at the same pace, and it's beautiful to share everything that if we find out about ourselves and our self-coping mechanisms and how to, let's say, break free from the cage of our own making that is constituting this kind of constraint for us. So then I started a month, and you probably don't know this about me, but when I feel a bit unsettled or overwhelmed by events, one thing that really represents a self-soothing mechanism is to make lists. And so I started writing down everything about wish list, for example. What do I need to dream about during my day? So this is my decks wish list. I actually forgot to cross off a few of the decks that were in my wish list that I was able to get in the month of May. Then I wrote down also a stationery related wish list. And then I wrote down all of the decks that came into my collection in May. And then, I really thought to myself, I should really start doing some readings, picking back up where I left the month of April, because April, I was very disciplined and I was really looking into doing card pulls every morning. And in May, I just really felt like I couldn't do it because I didn't have the energy. So what I did, I just started, but I didn't do card pulls every single day. I did more like a one pull, or I do have, sometimes when I buy a deck, the persons send me the deck and they also send me a few cards from different decks. And I really love that. Thank you so much if you're one of them. And so I started doing meditation on the cards that I was given. And I'm just really trying, and I felt like I was in a bit of spot of trouble because we're organizing our holiday for the end of July and August, and I really needed to find a pet sitter. And at the beginning, it was really hard because the time of the year is just really difficult. And so I started drawing my cats, which is terrible because I don't know how to draw to save my life. I don't have an ounce of art within myself. I love art, but it's not something that I'm comfortable with. But it's okay. So these are the pulls that I did for my healing step-by-step videos. So these are very personal, of course. And then something really wonderful happened halfway through the month, more or less. And I got back into reading. I have been in a reading slump for at least 2 years. And that, for me, just to give you a bit of a benchmark, it means that I normally read about 100 books every year. And it's a bit of a mix because I like to dabble in all of the genre. The only genre that I don't like is the romance. I just don't find it engaging for me. But I do love my horror genre, my mystery, my thriller, especially psychological thrillers. I also really love sci-fi, but it needs to be, well, it's a very specific type of sci-fi. So, for example, Andy Weir is one of my favorite authors in sci-fi, and also Isaac Asimov. But then I found a couple of booktubers and Kent and Books with Lala, and I just love them. And Willow talks books. Oh my goodness, I love her so much. And so I started writing down the wish list for all of the books that I wanted to read. And so I got really into that, and now I'm back to reading a book every 3 days, or at least 2 books every week. And I started writing down stuff about what I like to do in the month. It was still the beginning of the month, or at least halfway through. I also started a new project in which I'm actually pairing inks with decks. For example, when I use Robert Oster Whiskey signature ink, I really like to pair it up with Oak Ash and Thorn deck because it does remind me, the color palette reminds me of that. Or, for example, the Pen BBS Byron Bay. George Byron, not Byron Bay. Byron Bay is actually a city in New South Wales, which is really, really cool. Byron is referring to Mr. Byron, so the author. And I paired it with Cirque du Tarot because I thought that it really had the same kind of, not just the color palette, but also the same kind of vibes. And then I really gushed over the Ferris Wheel Press Harlequin Dream. And I paired it up with the Earth Tarot and the Soul Tree, Blue Earth Tarot, and the Soul Trees Ascension deck, which is a really beautiful combo. And then chaos happened, as you can see. And that was in between the halfway through the month. And so I just thought to myself, I really need to do something to get myself out of the slump I was in. And I just started publishing, as I was saying at the beginning of the video, I started publishing 1 chapter of my book for free on Substack every 2 days. And I just loved it. I loved the comments of the people. I loved the fact that they found it engaging. And so I also learned a lot because I did not know how to classify the trigger warning. So it is a psychological thriller. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of, unfortunately, domestic violence. I have to say that that book has been inspired by actual events. I'm not exaggerating anything of what I'm writing. Those things actually happened. And so as soon as I made that clear, I think that it was better received because there's a lot of domestic violence. There's also, unfortunately, mental illness themes and suicide themes. So those are the trigger warnings that I have learned in the process, how to tell people in advance before they even started reading the chapter. Then I am doing this, let's say, study on Stephen King's because he's one of my favorite authors. I really believe that he's misunderstood. Of course, he writes about horror, but Many horror books are very enjoyable even when they don't give you a really beautiful character arc or development of the characters. And I believe that Stephen King's, in not all of his books, but in the majority of his books, really show that development in the character. And I just absolutely love it. And so I started writing down the ones that I read and the ones that I want to read. And then this one, actually, I'm going to show you. So we started with my members doing this deep dive, as I was mentioning, of the Sacred She Tarot. And it was very, very interesting, but I was doing a lot of studies. So I usually spend something like 2.5 to 3 hours doing these kind of studies before I start filming. And I really love the premises of this deck because Madhava Padma is pointing out, and let me just show you these two decks together. Because that's what I ended up doing. So I started doing a bit of a comparison first for myself because I really wanted to see whether it was working or not. But then I really enjoyed it, and I decided that I was going to incorporate the comparison in the video first, just to give a few examples. And then I was looking for the examples that I wanted to give, and I realized that pretty much all of these cards deserve to be compared. Let me just zoom in so I can show you the cards a bit better. So I find that these two really resonate with each other. They are kind of complementing each other in the sense that where the Osho Zen Tarot represents, or it comes from an era in which it was easy to see how strong the divine masculine was at play. And because of that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having one energy predominant in a decade and then switch to another energy. So because that decades, those years had a predominant divine masculine kind of energy, we kind of see that reflected in the decks that were, the representative decks of that decade. And I do believe that the Osho Zen really had that kind of energy to it. And then I started realizing that that was indeed what Madhava Padma wanted to accomplish by creating the Sacred She Tarot. And she was mentioning that she also believed that there was a predominance of the divine masculine in the Osho Zen, and therefore she wanted to rebalance the scale. And that's why she confesses that she really focused on the divine feminine when imagining and creating the Sacred She Tarot. Obviously, we could have gathered that from the title of the deck. Of course, it's the Sacred She, so we are indeed talking about the divine feminine. By the way, I love how in many, many cases, these cards, when used together from the Osho Zen and the Sacred She, actually complement each other because you can see an evolution starting from one stage, let's say, of the Osho Zen and then evolving into the next stage of the Sacred She. For example, this card is very clear. This is the World card, for example, and this is the Four of Swords. If you're not familiar with the Sacred She, so there's just numbers and a keyword, which is not necessarily straightforward when you need to understand what card in the tarot deck you're looking at. However, that becomes a lot easier when you understand that she uses colors. So the blue is for the cups, and the purple is for the major arcanas, the gray is for the swords, the green is for the pentacle suit, and the maroon, brown, red is for the wands suit. But I really, really enjoy these two. So basically, you go from the World card to the Four of Cups card, in which you're kind of frozen. And I love the fact that there's so much numerology that you can actually feel in the cards as well. And so it is a really beautiful comparison. Let me tell you, we had lots of fun also pairing up this deck with a, let's say, a playlist of songs. And I created a playlist on Spotify and one on Apple Music because obviously not everyone has the same kind of platform. And then I also created a playlist of books that can be read. On the one hand, we were looking at the Buddhism and the branch of Chod within the Buddhism, which is all about confronting your demons, but also accepting them. So acknowledging their presence and just moving on with your life. Otherwise, you you risk creating that kind of conflict that is by itself is just not a very, it doesn't make you advance in your practice, let's put it this way. And then we looked at the Zen part of Buddhism, which is more, let's say, focusing, or it's more reflected in the cards by the Osho Zen. And the Zen Buddhism is all about meditation, but it's not a passive meditation. It's a meditation that lets you, on the one hand, achieve enlightenment, but at the same time also make you consider the possibility to act as a supportive person in your community. So becoming some kind of a bodhisattva. If you're not familiar with these terms, it's all related to Buddhism. It's a fascinating journey. I can tell you, using these two together, all of these, let's say, instances where you can see there is a little bit of commonalities in colors, for example, in the directionality of the people on the cards, but also the vibes and the energies. These occurrences happen very often. So it's not just a serendipity today that I'm pulling these cards together. If you use these two together, you will see that happening all the time. And it's actually really emotional when this happens, because both of these decks are very, very intense. I will have to say, when it comes to the emotional impact, the Osho Zen is still the number one for me because of the book, basically. I love reading the book that is a companion book to the Osho Zen. I like reading the Sacred Shitaro guidebook as well, but that is definitely more of a guidebook. And it does, I believe, so far, we've only done the first part of the Major Arcana, so I could be completely wrong. But so far, it is not as engaging on an emotional level as the Osho Zen Tarot. But in any case, so we've done this study, and or we started this, I call it Down the Rabbit Hole. And I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it with the members because there's a lot of different opinions. And I just love it because it is only by accepting different opinions from different people that you can actually gain more knowledge on things. And so this is all my study for just the... so the major arcanas are renamed as the Suit of Spirit, referring back to the alchemical element of ether or spirit. And so for each and every one of these cards, I found a position and the drive. And so I'm comparing the Sacred Shi in parallel with the Osho Zen card by card. So what's the position of the full card in the Osho Zen? Another start, whereas in the Sacred Shi Tarot, we have a beginning, which is representing a new start, not another start. So just to give you one example, we come to understand that the Fool in the Osho Zen Tarot is a wise fool because it has been already going through the evolution of the major arcanas, but it is not. It's starting again, whereas the Fool in the Sacred Shi is a pristine start. So it's a Fool that does not remember. The Fool has been through the major arcanas before, but the new beginning is a clean slate. And then obviously we're going to continue that throughout the month of June and possibly also July. And I've also continued my study of the colors and their relationship with the chakras. So that was a study of all of my inks, basically, and what they represent. And then I just went on, and I just really found it difficult to journal. And right around the end of the month, I did a study on the Devil card because it just kept on coming back to me. It just felt like it was really one of those stalker cards, you know what I mean? One of those cards that is coming out on your readings over and over again more often than other cards. And so it felt like it was really tugging at my sleeve and asking for my attention. And that was at the same time in which I actually received the Deeper Self Oracle by Sophie Elvari. And let me just show you, because this deck is really unique. I really love it, and I really enjoy using it from the start, I have to say. So this is an oracle deck by an indie creator. Sophie is based in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. And this is an oracle deck. When I got to it, I was the very first person to write a review of this deck, and it was absolutely pristine. So when I received it, I was very excited because it doesn't happen. If you live in Australia, you are never the first one to look at the deck. Never. And the reason is because when it comes to mass market decks, they just don't release them at the same time as everywhere else in the world. I know that there's some of you who are based in Argentina, and I know, as a matter of fact, that you're even worse off than us. I understand that. I am so sorry. I feel for you. But we have to wait 3 to 6 months to get, for example, the new Llewellyn's, the new US Games decks, the new Lost Scarbell, etc. The only two publishers that keep it up with Australia are Rockpool and Blue Angel, simply because they're based in Australia, even though Rockpool is doing a lot of work in the US. And so sometimes it just so happens, not very often, but it happens that they actually release a deck in the US first and then in Australia, or at least at the same time. However, I was talking about this deck, so an indie oracle deck, and generally speaking, I do not acquire decks, oracle decks that don't have a keyword. So this deck don't have keywords, it just has numbers, and obviously it comes with a guidebook, which is really good, by the way. So we've got the small thumbprint of the card, we got a description of what the card means and the keyword, and then we talk a little bit about the imagery of the card, additional meanings as well. Reflection prompts and affirmations. So if you, like me, like to journal about a card, especially when it comes to one card pool of an oracle card, these pages are absolutely wonderful to use. So as I was saying, I did this study about the Devil card, and ironically, the more I looked into this card, the more I actually understood that this is not representing the Devil card. That was the very first intuitive message that I got out of this card. Probably because of the skull, but at the same time, I felt like it was I don't know if it's gonna make sense for everyone, but a contemplative kind of card as opposed to a conflicting kind of card. So the Devil card is inherently conflicting in a sense that you're supposed to have these unsettled feelings. But at the same time, you do have Devil cards in different decks that I actually encourage you to look at things without feeling unsettled, without feeling overwhelmed, in a way that it lets you dig deeper into these feelings without feeling too overwhelmed at times when you just feel like you need to stop. And then after doing all of this work on the Devil card and feeling that the Devil card was asking me to try and go deeper into the issues that I was trying to avoid, so obviously shadow work, I then went to the guidebook and I found out that Sophie's intention for this card in specific is to talk about the divine masculine. And I had to chuckle because I have absolutely no problem with the divine masculine. I find it very powerful, and I do not read genders in energy. So the divine masculine, it's definitely not related to male characters in general. It's just relating to that really strong, powerful or the energy of the order. If you imagine a divine masculine arcana, it's definitely the emperor, because it does represent putting back order into an untidy situation. And you need that kind of authority when you have to clear up, or you have to simplify, you have to tidy up. You need to be understood, but you also need people to follow you. So it does have that kind of authority or charisma that is requested from a person that is putting back order in life. Again, not reading, I'm reading the energy of the emperor, not the gender of the emperor. There are wonderful women most of the time that are here in this world to actually put back some order. But I found that it was very, very interesting to look at these two cards, the Divine Masculine and Divine Feminine. So I was saying that this deck, generally speaking, when a deck comes without keywords, is kind of a deal breaker for me. However, When I saw this deck, I was looking on Etsy, I saw that it will pair really, really well with one of my favorite decks, and I'm going to show you. So I'm pairing it up with the Bonfire Tarot. This is the mass market edition, and there are two different editions in the mass market. One is with the glossy finish and slightly thicker cardstock, and also the colors are slightly more saturated. And one is the linen edition, which is rather recent, I would say, only about 8 months ago. But because I don't have the linen edition, I do have the indie edition, which is a matte cardstock. Because the Oracle, the Deeper Self Oracle, has got also glossy kind of finish, I prefer to use the glossy finish of the Bonfire Tarot as well. And it just pairs up really, really well. The colors are absolutely wonderful in both these decks, and it feels like they really pair up so well. What I like to do is literally just look at the cards in the Oracle and just, you know, say the first thing that comes to my mind, and feeling like there is definitely the keyword related to the deck, to the card, even though sometimes, you know, when I do go back to the guidebook, I find that that was not the meaning of the card as envisioned by Sophie. But it doesn't matter, because I believe that when you don't put the keywords on the cards, is because you also want your readers, or, you know, your collectors to relate in a more personal way. And so that's absolutely wonderful for me. Look at this, for example. This gives me vibes of a phoenix. So being reborn out of an idea and finding substance out of this idea, and going from this color palette, which is very muted, very dark, very sad as well, with these giant ants, for example, ready to bounce. But being reborn with this really colorful idea, and this phoenix that takes you on a different adventure, or gives you the possibility to start something again, or give you a second chance. And I love the fact that I'm pulling it right now, for example, between the moon and the hangman, because obviously we see the different perspective that the hangman has to take on things, because they need to understand things in a different way and not look at them the usual way. And the moon also makes you understand that your intuition is something that needs to be followed, it's something that needs to be believed in, because it will eventually produce an idea. There's a lot of airy thoughts going on in this Oracle deck, I have to say. It is a very airy deck for me, and I'm completely comfortable with that, because I'm an airy person, so it does resonate with me. I love when there's instances where you can actually read directionality, like in this case, because the characters look as if they are tilting their heads in the same direction, or towards each other. And that is really, really wonderful. So I really love using these decks together, these two. So far, that's the only way in which I have used them. But I'm actually really looking forward to start working with the guidebook and the Deeper Self Oracle. As you can imagine, also because of the title, we are trying to incorporate that. We try to incorporate that in our personal practice and go deeper. And that's one of the reasons why I felt very comfortable in going deeper in the meaning of the Devil card for me, which is not something that I would have done had I not bought or purchased this deck, because it would not have come to me. There's a few Devil cards that I really, really love in other decks, tarot decks. For example, the Tarot of the Holy Spectrum, the second edition first printing, or is it the first edition second printing? Sorry, I don't remember, but it is a Devil card that has a lot of catchphrases around it, as in, you're not enough, it's all your fault, you can't do it, desist, etc. So as I was saying, these two absolutely gorgeous together, and I'm really, really happy that I found this Oracle deck, because it's very, very intuitive. And so at the beginning of every week, I post a video for my members where I talk about the energies of the week. And I really enjoyed, for the month of May, we change deck every month. For the month of May, I really enjoy using the Inner Child Oracle by Amanda Lynn Aisling. This is a Hay House deck. I have to say something. If you've watched my channel for a while, you will know that every time I talk about this deck, ever since I got it back in February, I think it was, I always apologize to the deck because my very first impression of this deck were not good. They were not good. And I was on the brink of rehoming it. I thought to myself, this is yet another one of those collage photographic, vintage photograph collage kind of deck. It does have one of those Danielle Noel kind of vibes because of these cosmic backgrounds, for example, astronomy related backgrounds, but also because of the editing, or let's say the art style. This kind of, you have these stacking. Stacking is a term that we used to use in photography 40 years ago, so I apologize if it's not the current term. But it is what we used to do by making a sandwich of all of the negatives and developing that as a photo. It was a very interesting technique, I have to say. And so you could have, whenever there were areas of, let's say, light and areas of dark, you could have the appearance of the second layer or the third layer or the fourth layer, depending on how many negatives you were stacking. So that was my very first impression. I was like, this is not an inner child deck. An inner child deck needs to give me different kind of vibes. I do not resonate with cosmic vibe, ethereal vibe when it comes to inner child work. And then I actually started using it. And maybe that teaches me a lesson. Never give first impressions, because, well, it's probably one of the few times in which I had to eat my own words, and it doesn't happen very often. Sometimes it does, and I'm very honest, and I always say that. I really love this deck now. I started reading with it. I started using it for very specific purposes. Not that that's ironic though. I don't necessarily use it for inner child work. And so when I was saying in my first impressions that I don't necessarily resonate with this deck because I wanted to use it for inner child work and I couldn't because of the ethereal and cosmic vibes, that still stands. However, when at the beginning that made me consider rehoming this deck, when I finally accepted what I actually like to use this deck for, I decided that I actually like it and that my first impressions were just wrong. It can happen. I really loved using this for my week energies of the week videos. There is an image obviously that you can read. You can focus on the title of the card, but there's also a message at the bottom. And I have to say, this really helped me connect with the elemental energies, because my energies of the week videos are always divided in 4 groups. So I read the energies for the 4 alchemical elements of the zodiac signs. So for the fire sign, the earth sign, air signs, and water signs. And ironically, I found it very, very easy to relate to the characteristics of these alchemical elements in the zodiac signs, thanks to the sentences and the messages at the bottom. So when for example, if I was pulling this card, become aware, listen to the wisdom of the body, and I was pulling this for an air sign, I was saying it may be a struggle because an air sign doesn't necessarily relate too much to the feelings of what they feel in their body. It's something that we acknowledge that we have. Yes, we have a body, but we're all about our mind. Obviously, it is very oversimplified and generalized because, as we all know, these kind of influences depend a lot on many, many things that are composing, that are really making us who we are. But if we want to oversimplify and find a way in which we relate to the alchemical elements of the zodiac signs, definitely the body is more referring to the earth signs. Whereas the mind is referring to the air signs. So I was saying, for example, okay, so this card is a message and it's an encouragement for you to actually start listening to your body, okay? So your body is teaching you a lesson. It's giving you wisdom. Listen to it more. So that was a task for all of the air signs for that week to focus on. And so obviously that you can experience that by doing journaling, for example, or just meditation, or just, thinking about this. And that was very, very easy. It was a beautiful month when we look at how we interacted with this deck. I really, really enjoyed it. And so this is one of the decks that I use within the month of May. And then another deck that I wanted to talk about, and in this case, It was in one of my recent tarot and oracle haul videos. So this came to me halfway through the month, I believe, if I'm not wrong. So this is the Wisdom of the Wild Things Oracle by Angie Sullins and Eva Boniva. I had seen this deck a number of times because being at US Games, everyone had it a few months before us in Australia. But I actually purchased this from Amazon US. So I was actually able to get it relatively early on. And I have to say, sometimes when I look at too many walkthroughs of a deck, I kind of don't feel like I need it anymore. I don't know whether that's because I gather a lot more knowledge about this deck by watching walkthroughs and seeing how different people use the deck. And I feel that I confidently can say I don't need this in my collection because it doesn't resonate with me, or I wouldn't use it the same way. And when I saw it, this was giving me opposite vibes to what everyone else was using it for. And so I was very curious, and it's a mass market deck, so it's obviously very affordable, or it's more affordable than an indie deck at least. I have to say, when I got it, I immediately started pairing it up with my Nicoletta Cecoli tarot. This is by Los Carabel. It's an older edition. I believe that there's a mini now, is there? I think there is. And so I might actually splurge for the mini and perhaps rehome the full size, simply because this deck is all about feelings, and I don't necessarily need to look at the artwork and have a good overview of the artwork and the symbols on the cards. More often than not, I have to say, I kind of stay away from a deep dive into the elements of the cards from this deck, because there's some, shall I say creepy? Can we accept the word creepy? There's some creepy cards in this deck. Knowing Nicoletta Cecoli as an artist, she's from San Marino, which is an enclave country in Italy with its own autonomy. What I have to say is this: there's a lot to her art that is misunderstood. She is definitely an author or a creator or an artist that focuses on a children's book and children, let's say, directed children related art. However, this deck is not based on those drawings. These cards are definitely for adults. Okay, let me put it this way. And once we accept that, it's actually okay. I feel, at least for me, it becomes okay. I have to say, these two together gave me the possibility to really use the Nicoletta Cecoli for the purpose that I always use it, which is inner child work, but not all of inner child work. Let me say there's a few different approaches to inner child work, and in my case, what I consider the best for me, because it's very specific, is a work of healing of a primordial kind of wound. And so that's what I specifically use these two decks for. And I have to say, this was such a successful pairing for that type of work that I'm actually considering. So what I'm doing with my Starlight members, I'm doing these healing step-by-step videos, and we're almost at the end of the first part, let's say, of the year. And I'm actually considering focusing the last 6 months of the year on inner child, some kind of a spiritual roadmap to your inner child. So we're kind of trying to get in touch with our inner child and the wound that is present. And we're also we will try, because I haven't started that yet, but I will try and focus on how to encourage the inner child to speak up and tell their truth. And I will also try and set up these kind of videos in such a way that there will be a lot of interactions between the members and myself. If you want, obviously not all of the members are actually liking the interaction. They kind of do their work by themselves, and that's absolutely fine. You do you. But when there is this interaction, then of course there will be a lot of workshops and stuff like that. So it's going to be very interesting if you want to check it out. So these two, as I was saying, really gave me the possibility to do a lot of inner child wound healing, or at least addressing the wound, because obviously healing takes a long time. But they are absolutely wonderful together. It's not just that it's a kind of a similar art vibe, or at least style. There's similarities when it comes to the color palette as well. The only thing that I do think that it's not entirely matching up is perhaps the fact that the cardstock is different. So we have a matte cardstock for the tarot deck and a glossy one, or a semi-gloss one for the oracle deck, but that has never been a problem for me, so I really didn't mind at all. It was just to point something out. So these two, absolutely wonderful together. In specific, the Wisdom of the Wild Things is an incredible deck, let me tell you. I know that it feels like it's just another deck because US Games is releasing so many Oracle decks this year. I bet, I didn't do it, but I bet that if we actually did a tally, there will be more Oracle decks than Tarot decks. I'm not entirely sure, but it just feels like they're really, really pushing the Oracle decks out there. And I'm here for it. You know, I really enjoy using Oracle decks in my practice. So again, this was the Wisdom of the Wild Things, an absolutely gorgeous deck. So with my members, we're also doing the deck and walk, which is so much fun, I have to say. At the beginning, I wasn't entirely sure that I was going to keep it up because it is an additional perk to the membership and there's already so many things and my time is limited. But when I started, I actually enjoyed it so much that I really, really wanted to continue, and now it's become a feature. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing. So we finished it with the Aries 3, and then we went on to Taurus 1, which was very interesting. Taurus 2. So what I basically, Taurus 2, sorry, we started May because I was looking at April. So Taurus 2, of course, and Taurus 3, and then we started with Gemini 1, and I really actually enjoy it. I enjoy doing this with my members. I also post in the Facebook group. There's a lot that we do together. What I really, really love is, for example, pairing up the energy of a specific decan, so Taurus 2, with not just obviously the minor and the majors and the astrological references and everything, but also I always customize a spread, and then I put the PDF out for the members to download if they want to, but I also pair it up with a movie. And so for each and every one of the decans, I've actually chosen a movie, and it's a movie that I believe most represent the energy of that particular decan. And I also recommend decks to use, you know, the way in which to journal about the cards you pull, etc. So that was really, really interesting, and I'm happy to say I will continue that for my members. And we're almost at the end of this video. One thing that I really like to do when I have some spare time is to try and understand how I want to use one of my favorite decks that I don't use much. So it's almost like I wanted to give some love back to a deck that I really like and appreciate, perhaps because of perhaps for aesthetic reason or for different reasons, but I'm not using a lot because I don't necessarily have a specific space in my practice, and then I really want to use it and find it. And so this month of May, I actually really spent a lot of time with my Mystic Palette Tarot by Ciro Marchetti. This is the muted sepia. Is it called sepia? Anyway, the muted edition. And I finally found a really good deck to pair with, even though Again, my purpose was to find a specific space in my practice to use this deck in. And so obviously the Oracle deck was guiding me. I wanted to do some kind of healing in the month of May. And so I chose the Heal Yourself Oracle by Ina Siegel. This is by Rockwool, yes. And I found that when paired it up with a Misty Palette by Turma Katie, the Muted Edition, it actually works really, really well. If you're not familiar with this Oracle deck, it was actually released very recently. And I was very lucky because I found it back in March, I believe. I think it was March, when we had the Mind, Body, Spirit festival here in Sydney. So there was the Rockpool stand, and they were selling this deck in, in advance compared to other countries or even to Australia when it was finally released. And so I had more time than others to find out whether it was a deck that would work for me or not. I have to say, at the beginning, again, I wasn't entirely sure, but then I had this idea of pairing it up with the Mystic Palette, and it's fantastic. I don't know what I don't know. It might be because of the color palette. It might be because of the artwork being similar. It might be because there's a lot of close-ups. It might be because there's a lot of characters literally just breaking the fourth wall in exactly the same way. Let me just zoom in a bit more because I don't know if you can actually see this, but this person, this character in the Hole in the Soul card from the Heal Yourself Oracle is, yes, she's turned this way, but her eyes, and I feel like I need to put, okay, I don't know if you can tell, but her eyes are actually focusing, and they're breaking the fourth wall. They're looking at you, the reader. So this is amazing because that's basically what many of the characters in the Mystic Palette deck do as well. And so these two are absolutely fantastic together. I remember talking about the Mystic Palette in another video and say that I probably wanted to use it with another tarot deck, for example, the Mythos Tarot, but that didn't work for me. And then in parallel, I remember talking about the Heal Yourself Oracle deck and saying that I wanted to use it with perhaps the Steampunk. That's mainly because of this card. So the Steampunk Tarot that I got, and it works, but it's not the same. It just doesn't work as well as it does with the Mystic Palette. And also, this one pairs up actually really well with the Tarot of Vampires, the one by Ian Daniels. And this is just a couple of things that I do during the month. I mean, this video is all about a monthly wrap-up. I'm telling you about my practice, what I do for you as a subscribers of my YouTube channel, for my members. For my own private practice, I talk about new decks that got into my collection. I talk about my wish list. I talk about even my stationery stuff because some of you are actually interested. I know that it's not for all of you. I apologize. I do not get offended if you skip ahead to have a look at the decks. It's absolutely fine. On the other hand, if you do enjoy colors and fountain pens, I'm here for you. So as I was saying, these two absolutely gorgeous together. They really, really help establish a connection. And I have finally found a way in which to incorporate them. So it is definitely a healing kind of work. It's not a healing of the inner child because I just cannot relate. My inner child, at least, cannot relate to these characters. But it is an adult healing, and we need to do that too. It's kind of our responsibility as a functioning member of society. And so whenever I found myself being overwhelmed, perhaps because of my responses, it has been a bit of an emotional month when it comes to, let's say, health issues, not myself, but my husband. And so there was a lot of emotional responses coming from me. And many times I felt awkward and I felt like I was overreacting or I was being very emotional, even though it was justified because of the events. And by the way, everything is fine now. But I found that when I was in that particular state of mind, using these two decks together really helped me find back some kind of balance, ground myself, and I'm very, very grateful to these two. I'm thinking that I also want to try and pair up the Heal Yourself Oracle with the other Mystic palette, which is full color edition. That might pair up even better, but this month I just chose to focus on the sepia or muted tone edition, and that went really, really well. I was really stoked at how these two behave together. And then last but not least, it is a new deck that entered my collection very recently, and I have had no way to see how it pairs up with other decks. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with it, but I have to say something. It is the Alice in Wonderland Oracle deck by Paolo Barbieri, published by Lo Scarabeo. I have to say that I absolutely love this deck. It is fantastic, and I have to say, I know, always the problem with Lo Scarabeo is that there's only 30 odd cards. It is still 30 odd cards is 36, but I have to say that they are improving. They're going towards the magical number of 44. 36 is better than 32. So let's praise them. Always praise them when they're doing something right. I love this deck so much, but as you can see, it's still in order, or mostly in order, because what I do still is just looking at the cards this way. So I just focus on the card, I focus on the drawing on the card, I focus on the color palette, I focus on the vibe, the energy, I look at the keywords at the bottom, I go back to the guidebook, I try and understand how I feel about the cards. One thing for certain so far, I absolutely love it because it is one of those decks that really called to me. There were a couple of cards when I saw them that really gave me wonderful, wonderful vibes and really pushed me to acquire this deck. I also love the way in which the characters are depicted. It is a very modern take on Alice, but I also have to say that I personally love Alice in Wonderland, the book. And so I was actually really pleased that I wasn't cringing. Let's put it this way. There's a lot of tarot decks based on Alice, and some of them are really making me cringe because I really don't vibe with the way in which they have depicted a story. This is wonderful. And can I just say something that is probably sacrilegious, but to me, many cards, because they are muted in color palette like this one, gray tones, they give me so much vibe of that scene in the Neverending Story movie, where Atreus is losing Artax in the Swamp of Sadness. I don't know, it just, every time that I look at these two cards together and other cards as well, it just gives me so much of that vibe. And I have to say, it really resonates also in the universe of Alice, in the Alice's universe. So I really enjoy this deck. I just have to find the right way to use it, in the sense that, as I was saying, I don't have a use for it yet. It is very safe in my collection. By no means I feel about rehoming this, at least not yet, but I always change my mind. But I really don't think it's gonna happen. I think it's gonna stay with me. I don't always resonate with Paolo Barbieri's kind of art style. Sometimes I find it a bit too aggressive. But this one is fantastic. And this card is the one that I saw that made me buy this deck, the making use of the ink. And if you know, if you use fountain pen inks, you will know that you can never finish them, even if you get to live 1,000 years, because it's just really, really a lot. So I love this deck. I really love it. I'm just looking forward to, first of all, finding a tarot deck to pair with, and also, because not all Alice decks, tarot decks, pair well with this Alice Oracle. So if you have this deck, please let me know, and you pair it with a tarot deck, please let me know what you use for a pairing. How do you use this deck in your own practice? Is it for journaling? Do you pull only one card? Do you use it for divination? Or any kind of suggestion you may have is always more than welcome. You guys know that I always pledge to answer all of your messages and all your comments in my videos. I always appreciate that. And so, I also want it to be a very safe community. So there are really strong filters to avoid having robots commenting and stuff like that. I really don't like that. So that was it for my month of May, which, as I said, was a very intense month. So I made a lot of lists because I really needed to ground myself. The month of June is revealing itself to be very fiery, ironically, a fiery kind of month. And I'm very excited about it. And so we'll see. But for now, have a great day.